Morning, Trainiacs. We got a fun little project today. So, the new Canyon bike that I'm riding the most right now is the Canyon Grail. This is their gravel bike. And one thing that the guys said to me when we were riding on the weekend was, dude, you got to tubelessize those wheels. I agree. So let's say you're somebody that gets a lot of flats. You ride in really rough places, or you're riding a gravel bike. Potentially the Canyon Grail, potentially something else. Maybe you're doing some mountain biking, maybe you're doing some fat biking. In all of these cases, tubelessizing your wheels, taking the tube out and riding without a tube is one of the best things that you can do. I've done it with my fat bike, I've done it with my road bike, and zero, count them, zero flats on these bikes in 2 years. Let me show you what it entails and why this is actually the case, why you would consider it, and what you're going to experience that's different, because it's like a whole new wheel. It's worth it, but it's different. So, Trainiacs, you might be saying, if you're new to this, why in the Sam H would you want to take the tube out of a set of tires? Well, personally, for me, it ended up starting a couple of winters ago when I started doing fat bike riding. And in the case of fat bikes, the tube that's inside the tire, combined with the front and the back put together, is 6 pounds. And how it actually works is if you are taking 6 pounds out of rotational mass out of the tire, I think it's like taking 24 pounds out of the performance. So I saw a huge improvement in bike speed taking out those tires on the fat bike. But then it wasn't just the fat bike that I ended up changing over to a tubeless set of tires. I also changed over the road bike. And I kid you not, I have gone 2 entire years without a single flat. Not a slow leak, not a long flat, not a... And the good thing about this is that as far as a lot of bike things go, it's very hard to do a lot of real bike maintenance stuff without some specialized knowledge, a little bit of specialized tooling, but this is one of the things that is really quite easy to do. If you're the slightest bit handy, you'll be able to do this. So, first thing you gotta do, basic stuff. You gotta get the original tube out. Same way that you would do it if you're repairing a flat, basic stuff, easy. Now that I've got all the tires, all the tubes taken off of the 2 wheels, that's where we get into the real specific stuff for tubelessizing a tire. You can go and get, this is not a sponsored thing, I just went and bought this from the bike shop. This is the Petey's tubeless conversion kit. Really, any tubeless conversion kit is good. You're going to need some tape if your wheels aren't already tubeless ready. I'll show you what that means and what it looks like so you know if you need to put some rim tape on here to seal it up. You're going to need some tubeless valves, and these create the airtight seal between the inside and the outside of the wheel. And then finally, you're going to need some tubeless sealant. In the case of the Canyon Grail with these DT Swiss wheels, it's tubeless ready. What these tubeless ready wheels do, and what rim tape does if you have to apply it yourself, is like right here, there's a hole, and that's where a spoke is coming in. So you can see the spoke is coming in there, and basically it's sealing up all of the holes so that we have something that, as long as the tire is tight up into the bead of the wheel and the sealant has accumulated in all the cracks so that it can't leak out, then we're not going to have any holes and the tire can hold air. So your next step in this is to take your tubeless ready valve stem, a valve stem that has some rubber on the inside of it. So we're going to take that rubber side, poke it through, and that rubber is going to get sucked down into the wheel. On the other side, we've got a tiny little rubber gasket that goes onto the outside of the valve, creating an airtight seal there. And then we take the nut that goes onto the valve stem We put that on, and here's the thing. You want to press down the valve core and tighten it up a lot. Hand tight, I'm just gonna do this hand tight because we don't want to crush the rim. Let's go back, grab your original tire, make sure it's a tire that will sit into the bead of the wall really tightly, and you should have a tire that says that it's tubeless ready. Once we've got that, we put this back on to the wheel. So here's one of the bonuses of working on these tubeless sized tires. Using levers to put the tire back on when you have a tube and you're replacing the tube, big time no-no, because when you end up pushing that lever in, quite often you end up pinching the tube that's inside. If you are constantly replacing tubes and finding like, holy smokes, these tubes are going flat constantly, it might be because you're using the lever to actually push it in. But in the case of when you tubeless tires, putting the tire back on, it ends up, well, you don't have a tube inside, so there's nothing to pinch. So to get these tires back on, which when they are tubeless ready tires and a tubeless ready rim, they're really quite tight. So it often helps to lever them back on with some tire levers, which in this case is totally okay. Here's where things might get a little tricky. What we need to do now is the wheel and the tire are very loose. What we need to get that nice tight seal is we need the bead of the tire to snap into the wheel bead, into that tray. Now, we're gonna try doing this with just a regular pump, which sometimes works, but sometimes it doesn't. Stay tuned for like 5 seconds and I'll tell you if it works in our case. Awesome, that worked. Our job is not over. You want to go around and make sure that the bead is nice and tight everywhere. If that doesn't work, what you can do is you might have to get a compressor from a friend so you can get a really good amount of pressure in here, boom, quickly, before the air can leak out. With a pump, as you're pumping it up, sometimes as fast as you're pumping it up, the air is leaking out. But more often than not, these tubeless ready wheels and rims, they fit tight enough that you can do it just with a hand pump. Again, job isn't over yet. So here's where things get fun, but they can also get a little bit messy. So I would recommend getting some gloves out and putting a couple of towels on whatever you want to do. Now, so if you've never done this before, you might not know that the end of the valve stem can actually be taken apart. So what you want to do is actually take the end of the valve stem off. We're going to have a little air explosion right now. So just take some needle nose pliers, and it's just like that last 1/8 of an inch, not the dangly bit here, not the thing that you press down, but right under that dangly bit, right under that valve. Now here's the secret sauce, tubeless sealant, whatever it might be. You need to get some tubeless sealant, and this is like the glue, but it doesn't turn into glue. It stays as liquid in here. What we need to do is there's going to be a certain amount of sealant that, depending on which wheels you're using, this one says that I need 60 to 75 milliliters for a cyclocross wheel, which this is basically same sort of thing, and there is 120 mils in one of these. So I need to get this into that, and by taking off that valve stem, that's how we get it in there. And that is roughly half. Let's go and clean that up a little bit so that it doesn't stay on your tire. And then take that valve that we took out and put it back in. That's more or less it. That is the hardest part of it. All that being done now, we have to pump up the tires so that that pressure ends up pushing all the sealant out into all the cracks and crevices. So we're going to pump it up basically right around to the PSI that you would ride at. Make sure that that valve stem is closed and that the nut to keep that valve stem and the entire stem sucked into the wheel is nice and tight, so there's no air leaking there. And that's basically it. We have ourselves a couple of tubeless tires after playing the waiting game. During the waiting game, what you want to do, every hour, every couple of hours thereabouts, grab the tires, roll them around on both sides. Another thing that I like to do is actually put the tires in the bike and just spin them. Spin them and let that sealant get in there, tilt the bike back and forth. So I'm gonna do this gradually over the course of tonight and tomorrow morning. Take it for a ride and I'll tell you how significant a difference it is on this bike, on the fat bike, on the road bike, why you might want to consider doing this on all of those bikes and maybe not want to do that on your racing tri bike. So it feels exactly like I would expect it to. Basically, the heavier the bike you've got, the more difference this is going to make. For a fat bike, tubelessizing, 100%. For a mountain bike or a gravel bike, I would say absolutely. For a road bike, the reason that I did it last year is A, because of the reduced flats, and B, because if you take a look at the tires on this ride, you can see that they don't have a whole lot of pressure in them. They're kind of rolly and they're soft. That's the point. With my road bike in particular, I was able to bring the PSI that I had to ride down from around 90, 85 to 90, all the way down to about 50, and still actually have better rolling resistance. So you just end up with a much better quality ride. It ends up being way smoother, way softer, much less time repairing flat tires, and like really with that fat bike, the gravel bike, the mountain bike, I would say your training road bike, no question. I'll show you why I don't do that with my tri bike back home, because my hands are a little cold. Now, even though I talk about the lack of flats that I've got, still, especially if you're going out with a whole bunch of people that have all gone tubeless, I would recommend carrying a flat pack with a spare tube, because if this for some reason ends up going flat and then doesn't actually hold air, you can still then put a tube in, get yourself home. As I say that, I'm jinxing myself, and I'm sure I'm gonna get a flat this weekend. A tri-bike, however, is a bit of a different story. As I mentioned before, the rolling weight that you remove from the wheel is about 4 times what the tube actually weighs. More than anything, how it feels on the fat tire bike is that you don't have that weight of the wheel basically coming down and sticking to the ground. So it feels just a little bit more twitchy, especially as you're taking corners. Now, if you've got a sort of a normal tri-course where it's out back, maybe you have 1 or 2 turns to worry about, then by all means, the ride quality is going to be better. You're going to be able to lower your tire pressure. It's going to be softer. So you're going to get off the bike and you're going to be a lot fresher because you haven't had as much of that jarring. However, if you've got a lot of different turns, say like a course like I did back at Half Ironman Austin where there were 26 90-degree turns, that's not somewhere that I really want unstable handling, in which case I'd be keeping the tube in there. That's one thing to remember. This isn't a permanent thing. Once you take a tube out, you can go back to it. You're just gonna have a little bit of gunk from that sealant inside. So, to tubelessize or not tubelessize? The answer is yes. For me, it's no question, it's yes. And maybe you might have to go back and forth a little bit on the tri-bike if you find that you aren't very stable. It's nice, it's cushy, it's smooth, there's less flat repair. Now, if you're coming to this video after years of watching me ride Ventums and you're seeing that I'm now on Canyon, you can go to this video right over here where I explain which bikes, all the bikes, and why I've moved over from Ventum to Canyon, and what my opinion is of how to put together your first bike with a Canyon. They come together pretty slick. And if you're thinking about getting Canyon, I'd highly recommend them. And if you aren't already subscribed, hit the subscribe button below. Later, Trainiacs.